All right, everyone, here's the top 4 reasons you don't need to learn music theory to be a great musician. I just play the notes on the page. Learning music theory will ruin my creativity. So-and-so didn't know music theory and they sound great. Music theory is hard. Wait, that's not right. Today we're going to talk about some reasons why you should learn music theory and how these things can help you become a better musician. Now we hear there at the top a few of the reasons why people commonly say they don't want to or don't need to learn music theories. Let's break those down really quickly before we get into some playing. Number 1, I just play the notes on the page. If your only goal is to play the notes on the page, I don't know why you became a musician in the first place. Number 2, learning music theory will ruin your creativity. Was Mozart not creative? Was Chick Corea not creative? Was whoever you want to put in there not creative? These musicians knew music theory. They used it as part of their toolkit to be great performers, composers, musicians in general. Number 3, so-and-so famous musician didn't know music theory and they sound great. Now this one, I would really challenge you to think about what you consider music theory. Music theory is really any system that we as musicians use in order to help us create. This could be something as simple as I know that this shape in my left hand makes a G chord on the guitar, or something all the way as sort of complex as understanding 12-tone rows. One is not better or worse than the other one, they're just different, and they aid us in different ways as players. If we just consider music theory to be sort of the European tradition of analyzing chords with 1s and 2s and 5s and thinking about melodic shapes, then we have a very limited scope on what that means. All different musical cultures have systems of theory that they use in order to perform and compose. For some people, that might be knowing the shape of a G chord on a guitar. In other musical cultures, that might mean knowing a particular scale or rhythmic pattern. All of these are systems of theory that help the musicians in that culture perform, compose, and make the music that they're hearing in their head happen. The final and biggest complaint of many musicians, especially younger and developing musicians, is that music theory is hard. Music theory is a big topic that you could spend your entire lifetime working on and still not know everything. So what we need to focus on is defining the areas that we need to learn in order to improve our musicianship and be open to learning new ideas that we think will bolster that knowledge. Okay, now that we know a little bit about the why, let's actually put this into context in something really commonplace for us as low brass players, and that's a Rochut Etude. We're going to talk about 3 ways that music theory can play into how we work on these Rochut Etudes. The first of them is talking about our form. Now, when we talk about form here, we're going to talk in big brushstrokes, really just looking at the different sections of this song, not necessarily even looking at it in the same formal analysis that we might think of a sonata allegro form or something like that. Just big picture. We have the first chunk, the second chunk, the third chunk. Oftentimes we're going to be looking for key center, possibly looking for types of melodies, melodic shape, rhythmic ideas. This is what's going to give us the big picture about where these formal ideas take place. So if we're at the beginning of this particular etude, we are going to look where there's a transition in melody and tonality to know where that next form section starts. If we look at measure 18, we see we come to a resolution point on a C. And then in the next section, we start to hear a different tonality. We start to see some accidentals creep in. That's a really good clue that we are moving to a different section of the form. Now, in many cases, our ear is going to tell us where this new section of the form starts, but also a little bit of our music theory knowledge can help us here. We're in the key of C major. If we know about our theory concept of relative major and minor, we can connect with, oh, A is my relative minor, and when I get to this section, I start to hear those A's as kind of my final resolution points. We can also draw on some of our theory knowledge to think, all right, in A minor, I sometimes have G naturals and sometimes have G sharps. We see that play out in that short example I just played for you, where we have a G natural in measure 19, and then in measure 21, we have a G sharp. That G sharp, we could maybe think it comes from harmonic minor or melodic minor. Really, I would say it comes from the harmony that's going on there. There's probably an E7 chord there, the 5 of A minor, and so we have that G sharp. The question might be, why does this matter if we know where these sections are? I would say the biggest reason is this is really going to help us practice this piece more efficiently. Rather than just kind of starting at the beginning and playing along until we start to sound bad and then working there, we're going to say, all right, today I'm working on the second section, the minor section, or I'm working on the third section where the melody comes back and is kind of elaborated on. These are the things that we want to guide our practice rather than just working on a certain number of measures or a certain chunk of the piece until we start to sound bad. Additionally, I would argue we want to know about these form elements in order to help us perform the piece better and interpret the piece better. Surely Marco Bordoni, when he wrote these, he didn't just write a 58 measure melody. He wrote this in sections. There are distinct sections of this song, and when he was composing this, he surely had an idea about how these sections would sound and sort of fit together. So if we can get a little bit in touch with what the composer was intending, we can perform a piece better. All right, the second place where music theory can help us when we're practicing a piece like this, or really any piece of music, is by helping us break the ideas into manageable chunks. Let's look at an example. If we go to measure 47 of this etude, you'll see we have a melody that is similar to the beginning. However, it's sort of elaborated on. We have some extra notes, some other figures in here. Let's listen to that and talk about what's happening here. So in that example, in both measure 50 and 52, if we use our music theory knowledge, we can just recognize that those are C major arpeggios. Now, hopefully we've practiced our arpeggios maybe a little outside of context of this piece of music, maybe the similar way that we would practice scales, and we can lean on that knowledge a little bit here. However, even if we haven't done that, just the fact that we can recognize that that is a pattern and sort of a structure, we can think of that as a chunk rather than as a bunch of individual notes. We know as brass players, one of the most important concepts to us being able to play well is really having our air working in a flowing, consistent fashion. And the more we can think of our music as chunks of a measure, 2 measures, 4 measures, 8 measures, is really going to help that air work in a more continuous and flowing fashion. So in measure 52 to 53, where we have to play that arpeggio across an octave and a half, rather than thinking note, 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 we can think that the whole thing is one shape that's going up and our air can flow accordingly. Let's look at one other place where this would be true. Check out measure 16. Now at this tempo, that's not necessarily a super difficult line. However, what if this was a song where that was fast? There, it would be really advantageous for us to not think again about note, 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 but think about that as a chunk. That is essentially a 4-note grouping in the key of C major, and if we can connect with that, we can actually get our eyes and our brain off of the music and more to what we're listening to. Are we playing in tune? We can look at our slide to think, did I really get to that 4th position on that B natural? These things will help us to play more accurately and make our technique much smoother when we're executing fast technical passages. Okay, the final thing that I really think about when I'm playing any piece of written music, and I think it really helps me in performance, is sort of analyzing harmony as I'm going. Let's start at the pickup to measure 43. First, let's look at it without any sort of harmonic thought process. Cool, now we can certainly just think, okay, this is a melody. However, for me, as someone who is primarily a jazz musician, my brain automatically starts to think about harmony there. Now, as you can see, we start out with sort of a D7 shape. That's going to lead us to the eventual resolution to a G chord in measure 44, a classic 5-1. If we keep moving forward in measure 45, we see an arpeggio mostly down through sort of an A minor 7 chord. Possibly we could just think D7 for this entire bar, but we definitely have sort of a dominant or a 2-5-1 to tonic G relationship there. And so if we could think that this is sort of a 5-1, maybe 2-5-1, or just 5-1 couple of measures, that can give our ears a lot of information about what we can expect to hear from our accompaniment, what we can expect to hear from maybe the other members in an ensemble. Now, if you've ever worked out of this book with a piano accompaniment or the duet version of this book, you will find that sometimes the things you think are happening maybe are not exactly what's happening harmonically, and you'll find a few little surprises when you get there. However, if you have some good music theory knowledge, you can get pretty close on these and really have a good idea about what the harmony is, even without hearing any of those other instrumental parts. The reason I think this is important as a performer is when I'm playing, I don't want to just know what my part is. I want to know what the piano is playing. Maybe what the second trombone is playing, maybe what the trumpet is playing, maybe what the clarinet is playing way across the ensemble. That's going to help me make choices as a musician better. And if we could think just a little bit about harmony, we can think, oh, I have the third of this chord. Maybe I should adjust my intonation accordingly. Oh, I sound like I'm the only one who's playing this member of the chord. Ooh, maybe I need to adjust balance accordingly so that I fit in the ensemble better. Okay, those are a few ways that I think music theory is important as a performer. Whether you're a jazz musician like me or somebody who primarily plays music that is all written out in front of you, understanding music theory will give you a deeper knowledge and connection to the music that you're performing. Now, some of these concepts do require practice, do require taking time to maybe do some score analysis, working through some of this stuff, but the payback you get and the dividends you'll reap from investing that time are significant as a performing musician. All right, we'll see you all in the woodshed.